Greetings all. This is Malik Assad Jafar, and today we're going to be going over the importance of understanding the stages of change. Let's get into it.
I'm the best, so do not test the top of my profession, the master of my chosen field, of that there is no question. Serious.
So, as I said, today we're going to be talking about the stages of change. And let me explain why it's important. From a clinical standpoint, counselors and therapists benefit from understanding the stages of change, because when you've got a client in front of you, what it does is it helps you to understand what stage of change this client is in, and thus there are certain tactics that you could utilize to help said client. You know what I mean? Like, so for example, and I'll explain them, but if you had a client that was if you had an assignment or some tactics that were supposed to approach a client that's in the maintenance stage or even in the action stage of things, but in actuality, they're in pre-contemplation. You don't assess that, and this client's in pre-contemplation, and you're spinning your wheels. Like, furthermore, why would a person start someone in the action stage, even if they said they've had prior treatment history? You know, proper assessment, get it from the beginning. See, but okay. So that, again, like I said before, that is from a clinical standpoint. But what I would like to do is I would like for people to utilize the stages of change in anything you do, more specifically in a relationship. Okay? And the reason why I say that is because if you can understand the stage of change, well, first of all, if you are going through some form of transition or growth process in this relationship, there are certain dynamics that are going to take place when it comes to, some people want to talk about splitting the bills, or let me rephrase that, responsibilities within the household or within the relationship, or, you know, or how they interact and deal with people during the holidays, or how they deal with, siblings. I mean, you name it. As long as there's some form of change taking place and you really want this thing to work, identifying your partner or the person in your life, what stage they're in, can help you figure out how to communicate with them in a way that gives you the best results possible. You know what I mean? So, for example, and just real quick, if you had a relative or a family member or something like that, and they and this individual is operating from an action stage point of view, and they're in pre-contemplation, and you can't understand why they're resisting you and why we're always getting into arguments or whatever the case is, that's because they don't see, well, that's because they're not seeing things the same way that you're seeing things. Okay? So before I go any further, let me explain and talk about these different stages. So the different stages are pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. And for today's purpose, I'd like to say relapse. Okay. Now, yes, these stages of change are used in addiction services and other different areas, but I'll explain how the word relapse relates to everyone. In the pre-contemplation stage of change, this is a stage where a person is not willing to look at an issue, not willing to think about or contemplate how to deal with fill in the blank. Here, it's simplified as this. Pre-contemplation stage is when a person doesn't recognize, doesn't see, is not aware that is a problem. It's kind of funny, the last video I did, I was talking about not being aware that I needed to change because I was in pre-contemplation stage, but check that last video out, but in any event, yeah, that's what it's all about. Pre-contemplation stage is just when this person does not see a problem in what it is that's going on. So talking to them is, a mute issue. It's a brick wall. In fact, they may get a little bit resistant, okay, especially when we're talking about behavior issues. So if this person's in pre-contemplation, our job would kind of just be able to not test the envelope, but put ourselves in a position to have as much of an open dialogue to get this person to go to the contemplation stage, which is stage 2. Now, contemplation stage is when a person is contemplating. They're thinking about fill in the blank. They're willing to process the idea of. They're willing to focus on other, they're willing to be objective about certain dynamics and think about these things, contemplation. Now, one of the trickiest stages to me is the third stage, which is the preparation stage. Now, in the preparation stage, there was an example that someone gave me a long time ago, and the example was, you got 3 frogs on a log. One of them decides to jump off. How many frogs on the log? Okay? So people give you answers as to however many frogs on the log. But what I understood was that there are 3 frogs on the log. So when I first heard it, I told him, he asked me this question, and I told him, oh, two frogs. And he laughed, and he was like, no, there's 3 frogs. I said, 3 frogs on the log, one decides to jump off, and how many frogs are left? I say 2. He said, no, it's 3 frogs that are still actively on the log. Why? Because the frog made a decision. He didn't have an action. And I was like, interesting. I never really looked at it from that point of view, but there are a lot of people who are in situations who do just that. They'll make a decision to do fill in the blank, and then they don't execute. How many people do you know that are out there that decide to go on a diet, and then they don't do their diet? Or how many people out there make a decision to break up? They finally had enough. They're deciding that they're going to break up. 2 months later, they're still together. How many people that you know decide that they want to quit smoking? They've made a decision. They're preparing themselves to quit smoking. But but actively, they're still buying cigarettes. You would think, like, no, buy cigarettes, buy something else that is, that would replace that. But no. Okay. So having said that, that's why I say preparation is tricky, because there's some people who in their heart of hearts, when they make a decision, they just automatically assume that it's going to require, that an action is going to take place. And that's not always the case. There's people who make a decision to do a whole lot of different things, and, and they don't go through with it. I've had friends who decided that, they said they were going to cut their hair. And for years, they had their hair. And they ended up cutting it, but it took them a long time. And so if you have a person that is in the preparation stage and they are making a decision to do better in a relationship, or to do better in regards to this job, or to do better fill in the blank, or to stop doing fill in the blank, and they never have an action associated with it, guess what? What do we have but spinning our wheels? So very important stage. The next stage is the action stage. Now, in the action stage, what you are doing is you are actively doing something to pursue that which you realize I want to do something different about, that I want to change, the behavior that I want to change, the circumstances that I want to change. I am actively doing something and participating in an activity that will assist me in what it is that I'm trying to overcome, deal with, manage. Okay? That's what the action stage. Maintenance stage is just that. It is maintaining my active participation in doing said, fill in the blank. But maintenance is also, about, it's not just about just maintaining this one particular activity. It is reinventing yourself. It is making sure that you're staying interested in your action. It's making sure that it's giving yourself a pat on the back and respecting the amount of time that you have engaged in this action. It's everything. It's maintaining a healthy approach, relationship, lifestyle, dynamic. That's what that is. Now, in the relapse stage, I'm sitting here looking at a train. I hope he doesn't blow his horn. But let's be preemptive and roll the window up just in case. I kind of like that better anyway. But in any event, what was I saying? Oh, yes, the last stage that we have here is the relapse stage. Now, videos that I made before, I asked, is relapse necessary in recovery? If you can go back and check that out, but to get the specifics of what it is. And it was something similar to yes and no. But here's the deal. In regards to the relapse stage, relapse doesn't necessarily mean that a person has to actively, I don't want to say actively, regress and do a behavior that they said they weren't going to do anymore. Or like relapse doesn't necessarily have to mean that a person's going to go back to using drugs again. Or relapse isn't about me going back to that same behavior of, well, you said you weren't going to stay out all night. Yeah, I promise I won't stay out all night, and they do great for 6 months, and then all of a sudden, bam, what happens? They stayed out all night, and it was a big issue. You know, that relapse does not have to happen. The active part of relapse, because relapse first starts up here. That's where relapse first starts. And so if you can arrest this process first, if you can arrest this, then the action doesn't have to follow suit. You know, I knew a guy one time before, and the issue that he had was he would get up there and every Thursday night he was burning up food in the house. He was starting arguments with his wife. And why was he doing that? Because he was staying out all night, and he was like, okay, I promise I won't go do that anymore. And then football season came in, and he was really like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have told her that. And then so every Thursday night, when they were like at the beginning of the season, he was going to the bar and hanging out with his friends. And so he would make an argument, and he would burn up the food, and then he would come into the house and talk about how the food was burned and yada yada this and that, and then storm out the house and say, I'm getting something to eat. So one day he came home on a Thursday and he was ready to do the whole shebang, and he looked in the oven and there was no food in there. And then he was like, see, now first it's getting burnt, now there's no food in the oven. I'm like, what is the deal? And she said, why should I start cooking on food when you burning it up every Thursday? And he had relapsed because he was still hanging out, was in pre-contemplation stage, because he relapsed and went all the way back to pre-contemplation because he didn't even realize, so he says, that what he was doing was a problem per se. But you've got to know it. You're creating an argument. I digress. Okay, that's what counsel is for, yeah? But yes, the importance of the relapse stage is being able to arrest actions before they actually happen. It's about catching these emotions. Hell, I'm a fan of cognitions and thoughts, but it's about catching these thoughts and these impulses of what I want to do. It is definitely recognizing your emotion, but of course, beyond everything else, if a person actively does fill in the blank, then yes, you have relapses, but all of those are relapses. So it's just about being mindful, you know what I'm saying? And you can address those issues in your maintenance stage before you react or act in a way that's going to be unhealthy for you. So, those are the stages of change. The importance of the stages of change is being able to recognize what stage of change your partner is in, or your client, or your whatever, so you can figure out how to better facilitate or communicate with this person so you can both achieve a goal that you're wanting. I don't think that it has to be utilized only in therapy, but I think that a lot of communication dynamics that happen within the home, if you could see if this person is willing to move on, I don't say trivial stuff like patio furniture or something like that, but or cruise or investing in timeshare or whatever the case is. And you know what I'm saying? You could look at these stages of change within this person and be able to have a healthy dialogue with them about what you want to be able to do with this person in life to create change for the both of you. If you have any questions about these stages of change, I just wanted to present them and put them out there because I think they're so profound when interacting with people and knowing when to kind of put the brakes on and not to interact with certain people. So, yes, any questions, please feel free, contact me, on the YouTube through the message or whatever the case is, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Maybe we could work something out in regards to being referred or getting any advice from me. So with that being said, y'all out there, be safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Bam.
I'm the best, so do not test the top of my profession, the master of my chosen field, of that there is no question.